Roque wanted me to remind all of you that this is only one of 2 days in the church calendar that the priest is allowed to wear the color rose. He also wanted me to remind you that it's not pink, it's rose. And he said because Jesus rose from the dead, he did not pink from the dead. So you can kind of keep that in mind. This week, you remember the roofing project that we had about 1.5 years ago, which I was very happy to have done, but there was one little negative that I felt bad about this roofing project. On the rectory, we had an air vent, and this air vent was a colony of about 100 little barn swallows. So of course, when we had the roof redone, the vent went away, and so we destroyed the little colony of the barn swallows, which I felt bad about. So Debbie, with her craftiness, made a little birdhouse right outside the rectory window. And this week, the birds returned. I was really excited about it. I was talking to Father Roque and said, look, the birds are back. They're singing and chirping. They're really happy out there. I was so excited. Even Father Roque said, I think you're getting a little bit excited about the return of the birds. It's not that big of a deal. But it was a beautiful thing. And when I opened the kitchen window, the shades of the kitchen window to prepare coffee, and I saw the little birds out there, and they were fluttering around. There were about 5 of them. They were chirping like crazy. They were super excited. It was really, really a beautiful sound. And I think that the birds chirping, to me, was really beautiful because I haven't heard birds chirping for the last several months. I think because of the silence of the winter, the chirping of those birds was even more beautiful. It was a more beautiful sound in the very darkest days of winter, in which we are right now, in the silence of winter, in the cold of winter. To see those little barn swallows out there chirping around was really a beautiful, beautiful sound. The silence of the winter made the chirping of the birds even more beautiful. And I think it's the same with the voice of John the Baptist in the desert. John the Baptist is asked, "Who are you?" And he says, "I am the voice of one crying out in the desert." John cries out in the desert. And the silence of the desert, the starkness of the desert, makes that voice even more powerful. If John had been crying out in the city, his voice would have been drowned by 1,000 other sounds. But because John cried out in the desert, his voice filled the emptiness. The silence of the desert made his voice all the more powerful. The silence of the desert made his voice resonate all that much more forcefully in the hearts of those who heard him. Just like that bird chirping in the winter is more beautiful because of the silence of the winter, the voice of John in the desert was more powerful because of the silence of the desert. And I think that lesson is applied to all of us also. Because our lives, my brothers and sisters, should be a song to the Lord in the silence of the winter. Our lives and our example really must become the voice crying out in the desert. And I don't think it's a big stretch to say that we really are in the winter of morality. If you look at our society, there are so many, sadly, so many people who don't know Jesus. They don't listen to the voice of the church. They don't live their lives in a way that resonates with the gospel. And I think we could say we are in a time of winter in Christian moral living. We live in a desert of virtue. And for the reason that we live in this winter of virtue, this desert silence, your example, your life, your witness cries out that much more powerfully. When you live your Christian life simply by loving your family, by sacrificing yourself for those who need your affection and your care and your time, your example shines like a radiant light. This week I had a parishioner call from my former parish, and on the phone, while we were finishing the conversation, she said, Father, I do want you to know that your time as the pastor at St. Joseph changed my life. Your preaching, and I'm not saying this to, to like brag or anything like that, but when she told me, I sort of was surprised, because you just sort of go about your day. You just sort of do what God asked you to do from one moment to the next, and really, I know I wasn't doing anything exceptional or so wonderful, but nevertheless, God used me in order to help this person grow closer to Jesus. I'm telling you that because I want to remind you that the same thing is happening in your lives. Even though you may not see it, people may not come up to you and say, oh, your life has helped me grow so much closer to Jesus. The fact is, it is true. If we live our Christian life, we become the voice crying in the desert. We become the song of the bird in the middle of the winter, in this vacuum of moral living. We make a difference. One other thing about these birds in the middle of the winter outside of my kitchen window sort of fluttering about and chirping on that winter morning, it reminded me of something else. These birds have an instinct within them to long for something better in the coldest time of the year. They're already preparing their nests to receive the egg and their young offspring, because they have an instinctive hope for better days, for warmer weather, for more sunshine, and to receive the new life of their offspring. They long for something better than what they have today, just by their instinct. I think that instinct for something better also resonates within our hearts. We long for something more. We long for not just warm weather and more sunshine, but we long for the perfect day, which is that day in which we live perfectly in the light of Christ. It is an innate desire of the human heart to look forward to something better, to that great day in which Christ will be revealed in all his glory. And my brothers and sisters, that is, in its heart, the message of Advent. In Advent, we wait for the birth of Christ, but we wait for the great day in which Jesus will be perfectly revealed. The season of Advent is waiting for Christmas, but it's waiting for the eternal Christmas in which the Word of God becomes flesh, but raises all of us in our flesh to the resurrection of Christ. My brothers and sisters, as we long for that great day, I invite you to live your lives with joy and to realize that by your call as Christians, you are a voice crying out in a desert. You are the song of the bird, chirping in the middle of winter to the glory of God that points us to a great and beautiful day in the coming of God's kingdom.
Amen.